Hello, I would like to welcome everyone to this webinar. My name is Carole Campbell. I am the Principal Educational Psychologist at South Ayrshire Psychological Service. And today this webinar is to tell you a little bit about our Positive Psychology Happiness project that we designed and implemented within South Ayrshire. So what I'm just going to do is share this screen with you, so I hope you can all see it. Okay, so the Happiness Project within South Ayrshire was part of the Scottish Attainment Challenge. I don't know if many of you know about the Attainment Challenge. The Attainment Challenge is a challenge set by the Scottish Government, and this is looking at schools in areas of high deprivation, how to reduce the attainment gap between those in the most affluent and those in the least affluent areas. And the challenge was money that was given to the local authority to try and fund projects to reduce that gap in attainment. Okay, so just a bit of background about the project. The project was part of a much wider project which looked at literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing. And South Ayrshire Psychological Service were involved in all three strands: literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing. And the strand that I led was health and wellbeing. So the health and wellbeing strand worked on the basis of 6 domains of wellbeing, and that was by Yaxley et al. And we picked that because the 6 domains of wellbeing were all areas that schools could particularly intervene on. And the Yaxley information or Yaxley research was based on a meta-analysis of health and wellbeing research. So initially in the project, what we did is we measured health and wellbeing over a 3-year period. And what we found in each school, so there was 3 primary schools, in each school, primary 7 health and wellbeing. Primary 7 is children aged between 11 and 12. And primary 7 is the last primary stage in Scotland before you transfer to secondary. So the children in primary 7 over a 3-year period showed reduced wellbeing, significantly different from those in other primary years. And that also triangulated with lower school connectedness and lower attainment in primary 7. So one of the service managers asked, what can we do for this population whose well-being is poorer, and what can we do positively to increase that? Okay, and so we thought of this happiness project. And just to say, the project's idea originated in Glasgow Psychological Service, which I worked at a time. I wasn't involved in it in Glasgow, but there were psychologists there who ran a happiness project as well. So just to let you see the health and wellbeing, this is just a very quick look at the health and wellbeing plan. And the plan basically was to increase health and wellbeing by 15% in the 3 Attainment Challenge primary schools. And down the left-hand side, you'll see the 6 drivers that Yaxley identified that we tried to intervene on. Those were eat, move, connect, learn, play, and give. So the happiness project came into both learn and play. And what we did is we asked schools, what are you doing already across these drivers? And we put that into this grid. And then we said, what additionality can the psychological service offer that will try and support health and wellbeing moving forward? And the happiness project was one of the identified interventions. Okay, so as I've said already, at the start of the project, over 2 years, we had found significantly poorer wellbeing in primary 7 across the 3 schools. And that was also linked to measures that reduced significantly in school connectedness, learner self-concept, and also a reduction in attainment. Okay, so that was why we felt we had to intervene. We wanted to bring forward a strengths-based approach, and thinking that people all have strengths themselves, and how can we further enhance those strengths to enable them to intervene effectively when they are feeling, for example, there's a gap in their happiness. So the strategy that was taken was direct teaching, and coaching of strategies for young people. And I guess the premise was supporting children having their own problem solving methodology. So that would be one, in recognising that there was an issue with their happiness, or they were feeling quite low, or they were feeling quite anxious, then giving them ideas of strategies they might be able to employ, and then also teaching them to evaluate those strategies. How did that go for you? Did that work? And if not, do we need to pick another strategy? And if it did, then that's a strategy to use in the future. So that was the rationale for the happiness project. So in terms of the project, we did 10 lessons, and 7 were done in primary, and 3 lessons of the happiness project were done once the children had transferred into secondary. The psychological service did training for teachers, and the schools did the input for parents. So we had a training day in April, and the staff from 3 schools came along, including 2 feeder secondaries, and we did the training. And the staff were they kind of were a bit sceptical at the beginning, and then at the end of the training they felt this was something that was quite research-based, quite evidence-based, and it was something they really wanted to be involved with. They were asked to have all of the children complete a pre and post happiness questionnaire, and the intervention group was 79 children across the 3 schools, and we decided to build in a control group, and there was 38 young people in the control group. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, here are the 10 lessons that we used in terms of the happiness project. So the first one was get physical, and that's thinking about how exercise can improve mental health and a sense of well-being. So these are all things that you would think yourself might make you happier, but I guess what we looked into is what the evidence base is and how does that link to the application. So that was get physical. The second lesson was about counting your blessings, and that's a bit about gratitude. And so young people were asked to think about who influences them and how do they make them feel, what do they feel grateful for, and getting them to think more closely about that and some of the aspects of their life that they are grateful for. The third one is talk time, and that was a bit about the importance of social communication and building and sustaining positive relationships, and the importance of talking and listening. And within Scotland, there was a big campaign a few years ago aimed at young men and trying to get them to talk and increase their talking in terms of being supportive of their mental health. So this is something that we found quite a lot of research evidence around. The fourth lesson was plant something, and the teacher led the lesson on seeds and growing and planting, and that was based on evidence that things like gardening do increase happiness. And that involvement in the natural world and also outside cultivation. So there was a lesson in that. Lesson 5, you'll see, was cut your TV viewing time in half. And I think with the rise in social media, that's been more and more and more. And too much TV can be linked to unhappiness. So the children were asked to rate their viewing time and then to cut it in half for 1 week. The aim was each lesson would be done 1 day in the week, and then they would practice that for the week, and there would be small tasks to engage in at home. So lesson 6 was smile and say hello, and that was around smiling having a positive effect on your mood, but also the people around about you. And the children were asked to practice the study that was done at university, that that people who smiled, there was pre and post happiness testing, and that just the act of smiling increased their happiness. So the children were practicing that for a week. Number 7 relates back to number 3, phone a friend, and that's around those social relationships and importance in cultivating and building strong positive relationships. So the children did kind of research-based activities in the classroom, and then they were asked to contact someone they've not been in touch for a while, and it's all about those strong social networks. And we know from a multitude of research that relationships are really important in happiness, but also in longer term health and well-being as well. Okay, so number 8 was have a good laugh daily. and that looked at laughter having a positive effect on your health, and the children were asked to think about what made them laugh, what made them happy, and then record that, and then plan to be, to engage in laughing, which actually in itself was a very fun lesson. Number 9 was around self-care and give yourself a daily treat. So take time and make sure you're good to yourself. And it got the children to think about, what do you enjoy, what makes you happy, and how do you plan for that? Because I guess in this situation, I'm sure there are people here that will understand that when you're stressed and when you're anxious and when you're really busy, these are the things that tend to be reduced, and actually that's the time to build those in and make sure that you have those. And there's a lot online now about self-care, but at the time there wasn't as much, and it's to teach children that that's important for them from a young age. And the last lesson was a daily kindness, and that was relating to research that showed helping others actually has a positive effect on your own well-being, and children were asked to create daily kindness for them and their colleagues. So those were the 10 lessons, and basically 7 were done in primary, and the 3, 8 to 10, were done in secondary, which then meant a gap of 6 to 7 weeks. In one of the schools it was a lot longer between the 3, and actually probably in hindsight I'm not sure that was the best way to do it, but that was the way we did it at the time, thinking it would be a reminder once they're in secondary, and then we would build capacity in both primary and secondary. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop sharing this screen because I thought it might be useful for you to see the lesson planners. But what I have to do that, to show you these, is I have to stop sharing and I have to bring them up. So let me just do that so that you can see them. Okay. So this is, hopefully this is going to work. So this is our talk time happiness project planner. So just so that you can see it and have a look over it. So for the teachers, we tried to be as detailed as possible, bearing in mind there was a training in April and it would start in May. So we gave the teachers each a background to each lesson, and we made reference to talk time. It's about social resources. It's also about getting objective opinion from other people when you talk to other people in social context, and about building objectivity when speaking to someone about their problems. So then in each lesson there was a teacher explanation, and that was just a short paragraph on each lesson on how the teachers might explain it to the young people in terms of the lesson that's going to happen. So for talk time, we talked a bit about the importance in teaching children, the importance of good friendships and positive relationships, and actually the link to health as well of these things, and that sharing personal feelings can be a really positive thing. Within every lesson planner, we had a wee section for the teachers to go over with the young people about what the research in this area says. And because it was children that were 11 or 12 years old, we felt that that would be a good thing, that they would be able to understand what research is and what the evidence base is. Within each lesson, there was activities. So there would be 1 or 2 classroom activities, and also a home activity. And the home activity tended not to be anything that was paper-based. It would always be something that the children could easily do. So in terms of talk time, the activity was they were to discuss a problematic situation in pairs. And they would ask open-ended questions. So they were therefore taught what open-ended questions are and given examples. And then the other person had to reflect back what emotions they heard being identified during that chat. And so it was a bit about being able to read emotions from other people as well, and being able to talk to other people about their emotions, and then they had to swap roles. Okay. And the second class activity for that one lesson was about active listening and practicing being a good listener. And so this time, in a paired activity would be that one person would talk about something that excited them, and the one person would not listen, and then they would share how that felt with each other. And then they would do the second round where there was good active listening, and they would share the impact of that. And they were then asked as a class to discuss the emotional impact of someone who's not listening, and feedback on that. And so then within talk time, there was a learning and homework activity, and saying to young people that talk time is very important to happiness, and people should make time over the next week to talk to someone that's important to them, to discuss something that's happened to them. The parents attended a workshop at the beginning which ran through the project with them, and the parents at the beginning rated their children's happiness as well, and the parents were quite enthused by the project as well, so they had reported they felt that was a positive thing as well, so they were ready for these homework activities coming in. So I'm going to show you another one, so I'm going to stop sharing this just now and hopefully pull up the next one and be able to show you that. Okay. So hopefully this is, oh no, that's the same one again, sorry, apologies about that. Okay, here we go. So the second area, I hope you can all see this, was a daily kindness. This is just another lesson planner just to show you. This one's slightly shorter, just to give you an idea of what the lesson planners that were shared with the teachers were, and I'm more than happy to share these with anybody who's interested. So pupils, the teacher explanation was around pupils and asked to remember what the kindest thing someone did for them was. And if they struggle to remember, the teacher can use prompts, maybe example a present or someone saving them from a difficult situation. And then the teacher would introduce the notion of a pay it forward. So that might be playing clips from a movie, or giving an example that the children were all aware of about an act of kindness. And then there would be a discussion on what kindness is and why it's important. And again, each lesson planner had a wee excerpt on what does the research say, and teacher instructions, so that they could go through that with the young people, and that the young people would get used to that kind of terminology and that way of thinking. And there was a couple of research pieces that were discussed with the young people. In terms of an activity for that, pupils were asked to think about what is kindness and write their ideas down, and they would try and identify a range of different acts that they could make or someone could make towards them. And these might be really small things like opening a door for someone or doing some volunteering, but they were asked to think of those and write them down. And that was the first activity. The second activity was bringing to the children's attention that reducing our stress levels by being kind to ourselves. So self-care again can do such, for example, such things as spending time with friends or listening to music is really important as well, and it can help us be strong and positive and build some time in for that as well. And then pupils were asked to identify acts of kindness that they can do every day for a week. The feedback from the schools was that the children loved this activity, and it brought such lovely things like writing to a neighbour, writing to an uncle who'd helped them, and that the families really enjoyed this activity as well, and that they joined in as well. So that was a really positive activity that the children enjoyed as well. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So those were two examples of the lesson plans that we developed. Okay, so in terms of the results, what we did do is we did pre and post testing. So we did pre and post happiness questionnaires, asked the children to rate their happiness at the start of the project and rate their happiness at the end of the project. And what we found that there weren't any statistically significant improvements in the young people's happiness. But what we found was that the target pupils that was in the attainment challenge schools showed significantly higher awareness of how to improve happiness even after 6 months. So they were able to identify more ways to improve their happiness than those in the control group who hadn't undergone the happiness project. And what we found that year was the dip in health and wellbeing between primary and secondary was reduced overall. Okay, and we couldn't attribute it distinctly to this project because it was a basket of interventions that were going on that year, but that the health and wellbeing of the young people the gap was slightly reduced. There was a few things to think about within this project. One was intervention fidelity, and what that means really is completing the intervention as it's set out. And because we were working across 3 schools, that was quite difficult, and it was also done in the summer term. So that's a very busy term with school trips and assemblies and things like that. So what some schools did is they had to collapse some of the lessons to fit them into the wider curriculum. And one of the secondaries, the kind of motivation for the project really dipped in the summer, and obviously the curriculum took over, and they needed quite a bit of prompting to undertake the second part of the intervention, so that there was a huge gap in one of the secondaries, and I think it was November that the interventions were undertaken. So that was an issue for us, and it's something to think about. The delay of the summer holidays, in hindsight, was that a good thing to do? Possibly not, and may have resulted in some lost learning, and it might just have been good to do the 10 lessons over 10 weeks. And within the research, there is an argument to say, should we have focused on a lower number of skills, even though some of the areas interlinked? Maybe a lower number of skills would have meant more in-depth learning rather than learning 10, in a very surface way. One of the things that would have impacted in our results were the control group were not matched. So what I mean by that is SIMD is the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, and the young people, the 78 young people within the project, were all from deciles 1 or 2, and what that is the most deprived areas and the most deprived or the highest kind of levels of deprivation. But the children in the control group were not matched to that, so they were in higher SIMDs. So to compare both those results would have given you a difference anyway, had neither of them had the intervention. So that was something to think about. In a more robust study, you would have matched them for SIMD to see the exact results. And then also to think about the decline in health and wellbeing of pupils across transition. That is something to think about. Was that the time to run this project across a huge transition like that, or would it have been better done just as a classroom practice example within any primary level or primary levels that were able to undertake that level of learning? Okay, so I'm now going to see if anyone has any questions in the questions and answers, just to see. Okay. Okay, so there's one from Anne. Thank you very much, Anne. And so you have asked if you wonder whether this promoted ideas for young people to want to carry out their own research. What we did find, Anne, was that young people hadn't really been introduced to research within the project, and so research was a new thing to them, and so there was lots of questions around research, and the teachers had to give an additional explanation to what research was. They also did know that they were part of research and that their anonymised responses would be looked at and compared to a control group. So the children really enjoyed that part actually, and they found it really interesting, and the teachers reported back that that was a really positive aspect of the project, the introduction of the element of research, and also that young people were being involved in it as well. So yeah, I don't actually know if they then carried out their own research, but I know it did raise a lot of interesting questions around that, so thank you very much. Are there any, if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer those, because that's a whistle-stop tour of our positive psychology happiness project. Okay. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you very much for tuning in today. Thank you very much for having me along Southend Educational Psychology Service. I hope that this has been useful to you, and if there are any further questions or queries, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. And the Southend EPS have our contact details, but also we're available to be contacted through South Ayrshire EPS as well. Okay, thank you very much.